Hello, I'm Federico Campanale. I'm a French-Italian artist based in Amsterdam. We're here in Amsterdam in my studio as I just came back from 2 months residency in Rome at the Fondazione Bell'Arte. That was related to the bigger project, the Spur, 1618. I've been working on what I called urban structures. It's a project, research I've been doing already for some years. When I was in Rome, I started to explore all the elements that were constructing the urban concept, like every layers of history, of social culture, flux of people, everything which actually makes a city a city. And I think that all those elements are visible simultaneously. I search for a way to portray that urban concept, this idea, this impression of being a city, being surrounded by multiple elements that converge actually towards ourselves, towards the viewer. Yeah, I have some work here we can see. This picture is quite an important one for me because this is the first picture I produced there. What I portray here, it's two things. I want to photograph the place, but I also want to photograph the way that place is used by the people. It's Ponte Sant'Angelo. It's a bridge crossing the river in the center. A lot of tourists are passing by, and what they do there is crossing the bridge, looking in one direction, and coming back, crossing back, and looking in the other direction. And this is another photograph I made there, same place. I think that when we are in the space, we see a lot of things, and our brain or our memory is making a mix of all those things that we are touched by, that we are looking at, or that we're experiencing. And the multi-exposure process was the closest way for me to reproduce what our memory is actually doing after we visited the place. For instance, here I combined 8 photographs taken from 8 different angles around that fountain at the center of the courtyard of the church Santa Cecilia in the Trastevere neighborhood. And that was to recreate the experience I had while walking around that place, combining the main element of attention with all the different details that were also present in that courtyard. So that's a bit this, first step in which that I used to go on, and some other time, for instance, I would take the 8 cardinal points to try to photograph all the 360 degrees of our visual field. For instance, in the Pantheon, also a very touristic place, so it was after the Ponte Sant'Angelo, and I thought, okay, in the Pantheon everybody's looking all around. What I found fascinating as well was that the expression of people were very amazing, because people were very admirative. And I wanted to recreate this, to photograph that as well. One thing which is important also to say is that what comes out of the camera is what you see at the end. It's not a reconstruction of several exposure later on in Photoshop. So there's not digital retouching. It's just what the camera makes. So every pictures, the final images are made in situ, let's say, and in camera. What I only do is a sort of a digital development that I do in Lightroom, but it's not recreating digitally the experience. I started my research in the center of Rome, where a lot of touristic places were, and I evolved toward its periphery. First the closer periphery to end up quite out in the suburb. I made a series of photographs, I call it Case Popolari, in the neighborhood Pignetto. And these were long buildings, social houses, and the time that it took me to walk those 300 meters is in the photograph as well. And that's why the multi-exposure process was very suitable to this approach, because it was just recreating what my memory was actually recording. So the camera as a memory, or the memory transposed to the camera. The camera became just an extension of my memory. Another step in my development in Rome was choosing a place in a neighborhood, choosing a location in the urban space that I found spatial, that I felt personally connected to, and letting myself guided by my subjectivity and trying to recreate that experience that I felt there. At the end of the residency, basically, I learned how to approach my surrounding differently through the way I was photographing, the location I was visiting, through the research I did, because of course now I'm showing what worked out, but there's a lot of things that didn't work out. So it allowed me to actually fine-tune my approach towards a location and fine-tune the way I wanted to photograph places. Yeah, this residency was a very good time for me to develop something that I had started before, but nevertheless that I, there in Rome, got to another level. I think I understood better how to use my own feelings and subjectivity to photograph a place, but nevertheless still respecting the place in itself. It was a very good experience for me to spend those 2 months in Rome, especially hosted by the Fondazione Bell'Arte, which was also a great setting to work. And I think as on a larger scale, the project The Spur managed on a European level to create a very good framework for an artist to develop his or her work. Something that I will use in the future to develop my work further on and to keep on working. That's yeah, that was very good to be there.